But think about the temple, and then think about the whole earth. This is hugely germane to the meaning of Acts, and this is something I think which has grown upon me slowly since I wrote Acts for Everyone, and just I see it more and more in the text. For the Jews, when they were actually doing their best to be rooted in their own scriptures and the meaning of their own scriptures, the temple was not a place of escape where, granted that the rest of the world was probably going to hell in a handcart, this was the place where you could be on earth and also in heaven. Few were safe away from the rest of that wicked world. No doubt it often felt like that. Rather, the temple was supposed to be a sign and a foretaste of what God would do one day for the whole creation. Where do you go in the Old Testament to find the temple being filled with the glory of God? Well, for a start, Isaiah 6, you know it well. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. We've been singing it. The house is filled with smoke. But what's the other half of the Seraphim's song? Interestingly, in Christian liturgy, we often sing, heaven and earth are full of your glory. But the seraphim sing, holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. They assume that heaven is full of his glory. The house is being filled with his glory at the moment. But the seraphim tell you that the whole earth is actually full of his glory, which is a puzzle. And Isaiah feels it as a puzzle because he says, well, if the whole earth is filled with his glory, I'll tell you there's one bit of it that isn't, namely me. And the whole house of Israel, actually. Woe is me, for I am lost, I am undone. And there's a tension then set up within the book of Isaiah, as between Isaiah 6, where the whole earth is full of his glory, according to the seraphim, and Isaiah 11, where the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. But it isn't yet. There's a toing and a froing, something which is true and something which is not yet true. And as we pan back and look at the larger picture in the Old Testament of the glory of the Lord and the temple and the whole earth, there's a variety of stuff. You know, when the tabernacle is built in Exodus, and you get finally, after all the failures and the golden calf and all the rest of it, finally they make the tabernacle in the wilderness, and the glory of Yahweh descends and fills it. And that's the climax and the end of the book of Exodus. But that then is seen already in the Pentateuch. Numbers 14:21. God says almost incidentally, after the rebellion, you know, when the spies have gone into the land, very interesting bit this, when the spies have gone into the land and they've come back and they tell the people, oh, it's a terrible place, and the Anakim are there, and they'll eat you alive, and it's really going to be difficult to fight them, and so on. And only Joshua and Caleb say, actually, the Lord is with us, let's go, we can do it. And the people rebel and they believe the other 10 rather than Caleb and Joshua. And God is cross and says, okay, you're in for a much longer wander around the wilderness than you thought you were going to be. Nevertheless, the whole earth shall be full of my glory. Why does he say that there? Because the entry into the promised land, when it happens, and isn't this exactly what Acts is about? The entry into the promised land, when it happens, will be the coming of the glory into that land against the day when one day it will fill all creation. And that vision never fully disappears from the Old Testament. It's there, of course, later in Isaiah, in those wonderful passages in chapter 40 and chapter 60 and so on, about all flesh seeing the glory of God. It won't just be the people who happen to be in the temple who will see the glory of God. It'll be the whole earth, because the whole earth will be full of it. Psalm 72, at the end of that great messianic royal psalm. I don't share Walter Brueggemann's fear of the royal psalms. I think they're wonderful anticipations of the Davidic kingdom fulfilled in the crucified and risen Messiah. The final bit of that Psalm 72, let the whole earth be filled with his glory. Amen and amen. The climax of the prayer of David, the son of Jesse. Psalm 72. So you've got all those strands, and that's just a small selection. And if you like doing little Bible studies via cross-references and concordances, there's much, much more. Look up glory, look up filling, look up temple, look up earth, etc. You'll find plenty of stuff there to chew on. But this, I suggest, is what Acts is all about. Because Acts is actually the theology of Jesus and the church as the true temple. Jesus and the church as the true temple. Jesus is the place where heaven and earth have come together and are joined uniquely, decisively, and forever. And in his ascension, we have a piece of the new earth now in heaven. And then, just to anticipate, in Pentecost, we have the power of the renewed heaven now on earth. Ascension and Pentecost establish Jesus and the church as the true temple. The anticipation of and the means by which God's glory is going to fill the whole creation. And again, what will that look like? Yeah, I go back to Isaiah chapter 40. I bet some of you have sung in church choirs and so on, you've sung Handel's Messiah, or you've sung at least some choruses from it. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. I sang that at the age of 7. By the time I was 21, I must have sung it 100 times. And it never occurred to me to ask, what's that going to look like when it happens? What will it look like when the glory of the Lord shall be revealed and all flesh shall see it together? You might think it would be a blazing fire sweeping through. You might think it would be God simply forcing his way in. According to Acts, what it looks like is 11 plus 1 very puzzled men, and pretty soon lots of women too, going out, discovering that when they talked about Jesus and announced that he was Lord and prayed for the power of the Spirit, all sorts of strange things happened. Communities were transformed. Lives were transformed. Some people were deeply threatened. Some very unpleasant things happened. Luke is saying this is what it looks like when the glory of the Lord starts to be revealed, so that all flesh can see it together. And you can see the point of this in terms of the literary structure of Acts, because in the first half of Acts, 1 to 12, which is basically Jesus being announced as the Messiah of Israel and the Jewish authorities getting very worried about it. The center and focus of that is, of course, chapter 7, Stephen's speech, this great long discourse about how the Almighty, yes, he's made you a temple, but that wasn't the eventual ultimate goal. That was just a temporary expedient, which is, of course, blasphemous nonsense to a non-Christian first century Jew. And then the second half, chapters 13 to 28, about the gospel going out into the great pagan world of late antiquity. The set piece at the heart of that, one of the key set pieces, is in chapter 17, Paul's speech on the Areopagus, where he takes on not just the philosophers, but the people who built those wonderful buildings, the great temples, the Parthenon, and so on. We'll get to that tomorrow.